Other than terrorism, if there is one single thing that Muslim apologists have got better at in recent years, it's lies. Muslim apologists, propagandists, social media influencers, or however they come, they have been able to use social media to their maximum advantage. They have been propagating falsehoods to unsuspecting, naive Western fools who can't be bothered fact-checking these purported lies coming out of the mouths of these Muslim propagandists. Thanks to this Israel-Palestine conflict, this mask of, "Oh, I don't hate the Jews, I only hate the Zionists," is falling off. Recently, they've been claiming that under Islam, Jews were so happy because Muslims were so kind and generous to them. I've been meaning to talk about this, but didn't have any motivation to talk about it until I saw this video.
If anyone tries to tell you this in the future, you respond to them with this. For hundreds of years, the Jews were persecuted by the Romans. For hundreds of years, they were not even allowed to enter into Jerusalem. Who allowed them back into Jerusalem? It was the Caliph, the Muslim Caliph, Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu. After he took Jerusalem, he actually eventually allowed the Jewish people back into Jerusalem. The Christians did not want this, but they were eventually convinced. And as a result of Muslim rule, the Jewish people were allowed back into Jerusalem. So do not think that Jews are hated by Muslims. Rather, historically speaking, the Muslims, they came to the aid of Jewish people multiple times.
Yes, how good are Islam and Muslims to the Jews? I'll show you from Muslims' own sources. But before we go further, please like and share this video with as many people as possible. And make sure you subscribe to the channel as well to increase its reach, so all these naive Western fools don't fall victim to Muslim propaganda. Also, if you want me to continue making these videos, then you can support the channel by becoming my patron by going to patreon.com/Harris Sultan, or you can buy me a coffee. And you don't have to buy just one coffee, you can buy multiple coffees too. So let's get to today's video. So let's have a look at the claims of this Muslim propagandist. He's trying to tell you that Muslims treated Jews the best. And funnily enough, he draws comparison of Muslims' kindness to Jews with other pre-modern ancient societies. It's like saying we were really kind to our enemies because the Native American tribes used to skin their enemies alive, but us Muslims, we didn't used to skin them alive. We only used to stone them to death. Yes, that's the same logic. And I'll tell you, if the Romans were bad to the Jews, Muslims were worse. Have a listen to this clip.
For hundreds of years, the Jews were persecuted by the Romans. For hundreds of years, they were not even allowed to enter into Jerusalem.
The Romans were actually pretty good to the Jews, as per the standards of the time, of course, until the Jewish revolt of 66 AD. Yes, that's when the Romans put the foot down, as any other empire would, and yes, they were pretty brutal. And there were also times during Byzantine rule when Jews were allowed into Jerusalem. Basically, it depended on the ruler. Some rulers were nicer and some rulers were harsh. However, what this guy didn't tell you, probably he didn't even know because these guys are just ignorant, they never look at history. Just before the Islamic conquest of Jerusalem in 637 AD, there was a brief Persian rule from 614 to 629 AD. During this time, Jews absolutely loved it, maybe because the Persians wanted to win over the local population. Regardless of that, the Jews were the happiest under the Persian rule. In fact, when the Byzantines recaptured Jerusalem in 629 AD, they were particularly harsh towards the Jews because they thought that the Jews had conspired with the Persians against the Byzantines. That was the reason why, in that period from 629 till 637 AD until the Muslims came, the Jews were treated very harshly by the Byzantines. So when the Muslims conquered Jerusalem, just like the Persians, they also wanted to be ultra nice to the Jews to tell them that, hey, the Byzantines were bad and evil towards you. We are the good guys. We are nice. And that's the propaganda they started spreading. But how nice was Umar to the Jews? We'll talk about it in the later part of the video, but listen to this part.
Who allowed them back into Jerusalem? It was the Caliph, the Muslim Caliph, Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu. After he took Jerusalem, he actually eventually allowed the Jewish people back into Jerusalem.
Okay, he's just talking like a parrot who's just learned a few buzzwords from his madrasa. I can tell he doesn't know the history. And he didn't even bother to do any research. Why? Because whatever he's saying, it favors the Muslim narrative and propaganda. As I said, the Jews had been expelled and faced extreme hardship from 629 AD onwards when the Byzantines recaptured Jerusalem. Umar did not do anything unprecedented. It's not like Jews had never been allowed into Jerusalem since the revolt of 66 AD. Listen to the next part.
The Christians did not want this, but they were eventually convinced. And as a result of Muslim rule, the Jewish people were allowed back into Jerusalem.
Okay, that makes sense. There might have been some Christian fundamentalists who did not want to allow Jews back into Jerusalem, as they believed Jews were responsible for killing Jesus Christ. That's fine. There are radical fundamentalists in every society, just like there are Muslims who don't want Hindus and Christians and Jews living next to them in the same neighborhood even today in the 21st century. But a ruler always tries to find the middle ground. Umar was not the only one who said, okay, Jews, you can live here as well. As I said, there was a political reason behind that too, because he wanted to win over the local Jewish population. He wanted to tell them that, hey, I am better than the Byzantinians. But he was not the only one. But apart from that 629 to 637 AD period, there were many other emperors as well who were ultra nice to Jews as well. For example, Julian the Apostate, who was known for being ultra nice to the Jews. Maybe he also had a political agenda because he wanted to get rid of Christianity and bring back paganism. Okay, let me give you another example. Anastasius, from 491 AD to 518 AD, he was also known to be very kind and nice to the Jews, and Jews loved him. So this notion that only Muslims were ultra nice to the Jews is BS, and only an ignorant or a lying Muslim propagandist would say it with a straight face. Okay, there is no denying that fundamentalist Christians have always hated the Jews because they believe that they killed Jesus Christ, which they actually did. But okay, 2,000 years ago, what are you going to do? Punish them today? Anyway, that's how religions work, unfortunately. But at least in Christian scriptures, there is no anti-Semitism. And to the best of my knowledge, there is no other religion that actually teaches you to hate the Jews other than Islam. But Muslim propagandists and liars would never tell you about this. And let me prove it to you. Let's start with the golden quotes of the founder of Islam, the greatest man who ever lived, the man who had a direct hotline to the creator of the universe. Yes, you guessed it right. I'm talking about the great Prophet Muhammad. When Prophet Muhammad conquered Banu Qurayza, a Jewish tribe, and killed nearly 300 to 700 men in a single day, you know what he said? According to Sahih Bukhari 4123, he said, abuse them with your poems. In another instant, he said, may Allah curse be on the Jews, for they built the places of worship at the graves of their prophets. Sahih Bukhari 437. And according to Umar bin al-Khattab, the same guy, this propagandist, was talking him up.
Who allowed them back into Jerusalem? It was the Caliph, the Muslim Caliph, Umar ibn al-Khattab.
The guy who was supposed to be so nice to the Jews. He said that he heard Prophet Muhammad say that, if I live, God willingly, I shall certainly expel the Jews and Christians from the Arabian Peninsula. And that's exactly what this friend of the Jews, Umar bin Khattab, did when he came to power. He expelled every single Jew from the Arabian Peninsula. Wasn't he nice to the Jews? I think this is a pretty good reason to create a Jewish homeland. They've been expelling Jews left, right, and center from Arabia. Well, I think you should create a state of Israel. Okay, this one is my favorite. Prophet Muhammad said, do not give the people of the book the greeting first. Force them to the narrowest part of the street. Al-Adab al-Mufrad 1103. This is not some crazy king saying that. These are the words of the founder of Islam. He hated the Jews and it transcended on Muslims. Have a look at this video. A Muslim who takes Prophet Muhammad's words very seriously is actually acting on the words of the Prophet right here in the 21st century UK. Imagine if someone started doing that to Muslims. If you see a Muslim, push him in the narrowest part of the street. How would Muslims feel? You would never stop hearing the shrieks of Islamophobia. See the lies now? Okay, there's so many more, but I'll have to end it, otherwise this video will be 2 hours long. Let me end this with this golden quote from the great man himself from the 7th century. The hour will not be established until you fight the Jews, and the stone behind which a Jew will be hiding will say, oh Muslim, there is a Jew hiding behind me. Come and kill it. Ha 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 ha. Okay, I added the ha 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 bit myself because it's so evil. Okay, Islam and Prophet Muhammad are so anti-Jew that Prophet Muhammad here is trying to tell you that Jews are so evil that even inanimate objects like rocks and trees, even they hate the Jews. And when you confront Muslims with this, you say, what the hell is this? You know what they say? They say this is not anti-Semitism or anti-Jew. This doesn't mean that we hate Jews. These are just our beliefs. Have a listen to this guy.
But there will come a time, ya Muslim. There will come a time. And we relate the ahadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that the Muslims and the Jews, they will fight. And there is coming a time where there will be fighting. And he told us, alayhi salatu wassalam, that the inanimate objects will speak on those days. The inanimate object will speak. And this is not anti-Semitic, this is a part of our tradition. We simply relay the hadith.
Yeah, well, you can't reason with these people. But some naive Western commie fools, because they hate the West so much, they would believe anything that comes out of a Muslim propagandist's mouth. Okay, that was Prophet Muhammad, the founder of Islam. Now let's get to his alt ID, Allah, who is reportedly the author of the Quran. Quran, chapter 5, verse 51 says, "Do not take Jews and Christians as friends because they are friends of each other." Since Prophet Muhammad used to make up these verses as he felt in the moment. If he's pissed off at pagans, he would say something about pagans. If he's pissed off at his friends for loitering at his house, he would insert that in the Quran. If he's angry that his wives are nagging him for sleeping with his sex slave, he would make up a verse for it. So just like that. In this instant, he was angry at Jews and Christians because they had supported each other and they did not agree with Muhammad. So instead of admitting that maybe your logic is flawed, he said, no, Jews and Christians are friends of each other. That's why they hate me. They love each other. So do not be friends with them. But later on, have a look how Prophet Muhammad changed his tone. In the same chapter, chapter 5, verse 82 says, "And you will certainly find that the people most hostile against the believers, i.e. the Muslims, are the Jews and the ones who ascribe partners to Allah, i.e. the pagans. You will certainly find that the closest of them in friendship with the believers are those who say we are Christians." Didn't he just say that Jews and Christians can't be friends, they are friends of each other? And now all of a sudden he's changed his tone and he's saying that Christians are more likely to be friends than Jews. Why? What's the reason behind this sudden change of heart? Well, you Christians, you should be thankful to these Ethiopian Christians who came and met Prophet Muhammad and they tickled his ego. The whole story behind this verse is detailed by Ibn Kathir, but I don't have time to get into it. It's a separate topic. But to understand this, Ethiopian Christians were nice to Prophet Muhammad and Jews were not nice to him, so he changed his tone and he said, well, Christians are better than Jews. As easy as that. Okay, have a look at another Quranic verse. Chapter 2, verse 65 says, "We said to them, become apes." So basically, the Jews are so bad that Allah, the creator of the universe, even he has punished them. And he has turned them into apes, and in some verses pigs as well. When you believe that the creator of the universe hates this particular kind of people so much that he has turned them into apes and pigs, how could you not hate them? And this is the reason why they hate them. Oh, by the way, on a separate note, Muslims actually believe that it's not humans evolving from apes, but apes evolving from humans, as per this verse. Okay, all right. Okay, so there's so many other anti-Jewish, anti-Christian verses, but again, I don't have time for this. Let's get to the business end of the video. So this guy in his video claims that Umar bin Khattab, the second Caliph of Islam, by the way, the same guy who had actually expelled all the Jews from Arabian Peninsula, was so good to the Jews loved living under him. How good was he? We can actually find out by a document called the Pact of Umar. Yes, when Umar conquered Jerusalem in 637 AD, he went there, he drew up a pact with the Jews and Christians of Jerusalem. Here are some of the points, and I ask you, and even if you're a Muslim, I ask you, be as neutral as you can and ask yourself, hand on heart, would you be happy if these stipulations were put on you? Stipulation number 1, prohibition against building new churches, places of worship, monasteries, or a new cell. Hence, he was also forbidden to build new synagogues. It is known that new synagogues were only built after the occupation of Islam. For example, in Jerusalem, in Ramleh. A similar law prohibiting the building of new synagogues existed in the Byzantines and was therefore not new for all Jews. It was new for the Christians. So basically, Christians had been forbidding the Jews from building new synagogues. So the Jews were oppressed by the Byzantines. And as I said, some Byzantine emperors were nice, some were not. But overall, these were not Western secular liberal democracies of the 21st century. Muslims said, oh, now you have new masters. We can build new mosques, but you can't build new churches or synagogues. Prohibition against rebuilding destroyed churches by day or night, meaning you can never rebuild new churches in your own neighborhoods or those situated in Muslim quarters. So basically, you can't rebuild fallen churches or synagogues. The places of worship of non-Muslims must be lower in elevation than the lowest mosque in town. So if there is a mosque that is only 6 feet high, then you cannot go higher than that. You have to be lower than that. Oh, wow. Imagine such a condition in London or New York. The no mosque can be higher than the lowest church. Imagine that. Come on, Muslims. Try it. Try answering that. You think this is nice? Okay, so this discrimination was not only limited to places of worship. The houses of non-Muslims must not be taller in elevation than the houses of Muslims. So even the houses can't be higher than Muslim houses. Hey, you can't live on that top floor penthouse because no Christian or a Jew lives higher than you, so you have to just sell it and just move to one of the lower floors. Imagine this. Come on, Muslims, you think this is fair? Prohibition against hanging a cross on the outside of churches. You can't even hang your bloody cross outside of a church. Muslims should be allowed to enter churches for shelter at any time, both day and night. But I'm sure no Jew or a Christian can enter a mosque, unless he is obviously converting to Islam. Prohibition against Christians and Jews raising their voices at prayer times. Christians forbidden to publicly display their religion or to be seen with Christian books or symbols in public, or the roads or in the markets of the Muslims. Basically, you can't be seen holding a Bible or having a rosary around your neck, nothing. You can't be seen as Christians. Palm Sunday and Easter parades were banned. Okay, just like today in London and New York, we ban Eid celebrations. Muslims love blocking streets and pray in public and be a nuisance for everyone else. And these poor, nice Western people, they just say, oh, isn't that beautiful? What a beautiful culture that is. Prohibition against burying non-Muslim dead near Muslims. Funerals to be conducted quietly. Prohibition against raising a pig next to a Muslim neighbor. Okay, that's fair. Christians were forbidden to sell alcoholic beverages to Muslims. Okay, that's fair as well. Christians were forbidden to provide cover or shelter for spies. Okay, that's fair as well. Prohibition against telling a lie about Muslims. Okay, what about a lie about Christians and Jews? Nah, that's nothing. That's fine. That's up to our discretion. By the way, do you know if a Christian or a Jew or a non-Muslim kills a Muslim, he's going to be beheaded? And you'd be like, okay, Harry, he's a murderer. So what's... But if a Muslim kills a non-Muslim, even if he's living under a treaty in Darul Islam, i.e. a Muslim country or a Muslim state, he can't be killed. He has to either give him blood money or be forced into forgiving him or some sort of a compensation. But a Muslim who kills a non-Muslim cannot be sentenced to death. Isn't that amazing? Don't Muslims love to tell us that, oh, Islam is just and pure and nice to all people. It's a blessing for all people. No. Obligation to show deference towards Muslims. If a Muslim wishes to sit, the non-Muslim should rise from his seat and give it to the Muslim. Does that ring a bell? If a white person gets on a bus and a black person is sitting down, he has to vacate the seat for the white person. Muslims would love to tell you, haha, look how bad America was. And of course, that was bad. But this is what your second caliph, the third most revered figure in Sunni Islam, did. But don't let the facts get in your way. With Islam and Muslim apologists, it's all about lying and propaganda and deceit and fraud. So you saw how anti-Jew Prophet Muhammad was. You obviously saw the Quran. And you also saw how anti-Jew Muslims are. especially Umar bin Khattab, the main guy who was in the original video of that Muslim propagandist. Just on a side note, Hitler was the first one who forced the Jews to wear the Star of David so they could be humiliated. Think again. One of the most revered figures of Sunni Islam, Umar bin Abdulaziz, often referred as the fifth Caliph of Islam, even though he wasn't the fifth one. But because he's so revered amongst Muslims, they include him as the fifth Caliph of Islam. He was the first person to force the Jews to wear the Star of David around their neck so they could be humiliated. Now imagine this being done to Muslims today in any part of the world. Of course, that would be atrocious and should never be allowed. But how can these same Muslims say that, oh, Jews were so nice under them? I can overlook the fact that these were pre-modern times. They were brutal times. Everyone was bad. These people were just out to kill each other and, it's my way or the highway. I get that. But Muslims don't see it like that. Muslims see that morality set by Prophet Muhammad and the Quran and the first four caliphs is eternal. They can't be wrong. They can't be bad. Well, we have definitely proven that today's world is far more just than the world created by Prophet Muhammad or his four caliphs. And as I said, if you're a Muslim, go through these verses and just replace the Jews or Christians with Muslims. See how you feel. And then tell me if you would not call that Islamophobic. So next time, if a Muslim tells you that the Jews loved living under Muslim rule, show them this video. So I hope you liked today's video. Like, share, and subscribe to the channel so I can maximize my reach. And if you want me to keep producing awesome videos like these, you can be my patron by going to patreon.com/Harris Sultan. And you can also buy me 200 or 300, 400, 500. There's no limit. As many coffees as you can on buymeacoffee/Harris Sultan. Until next time, ta-da. If you'd like to support my work, you can become my patron by going to patreon.com/Harris Sultan, or you can simply buy me a coffee.